It's kind of just been this philosophy of, when you look back at it, you've paid down debt on top of the fact that you're stacking up additional cash because you're not paying for rent, right? So that's kind of been the goal.
Welcome. This is the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping others through real estate investing. Our hosts interview guests from all aspects of real estate investing who generously share valuable experiences and advice. Whether you're starting out or an experienced investor, this is the show for you.
Hello and how's it going? My name is Travis Shelton and welcome to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, where I interview guests who want to help others investing in real estate. We keep these podcasts quick, fun, and full of value, and really excited for a cool conversation today with a personal buddy of mine, Trent Varhol, who is a personal CFO and real estate investor. Trent, thanks for joining me today.
Hey Travis, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, doing great today, and excited for this conversation because I know you're going to be able to provide a ton of value and in kind of like a very specific niche that I don't think we've talked enough about yet on this podcast. I know you pretty well, but for our audience, can you give our audience your 30-second elevator pitch, just a little bit more about yourself and your real estate background?
Yeah, Travis. So I'm a Phoenix native. I'm probably one of the only Phoenix natives left. And my journey really began kind of in high school. I wasn't the best student in high school, wasn't the best person. Got into college just barely. And that's when I really found personal finance, was in college. Ever since then, I kind of got on the real estate track and been doing this now for probably 10 years total.
Wow, that's awesome. I always love the stories too. It never seems like it's the A+ students. It's always like the C students that end up being super successful as entrepreneurs and real estate investors. So looking forward to sharing more of your story. But we always start these podcasts out with some motivation. So would you like to share your motivational quote with the audience?
Yeah, my motivational quote is, "It's always darkest before dawn." I feel like all the projects I've been in with real estate and what I'm kind of recently going through in life, you feel like you're going through this dark hole, and then right before it just kind of explodes and everything starts going your way. So if you ever feel like you're in that dark place or nothing's going your way, it's always darkest before dawn.
I love that. Yeah, I think everyone thinks it's always sunshine and rainbows, right? In every aspect of life. But I just recorded a podcast. It was like failure is the first step, right? And it's like that's what I feel like is like you have to endure that little bit of darkness per se before you actually see that sunrise or see that pot of gold at the end of the tunnel or whatever it may be. But really like that quote. It's always darkest before dawn, and I think something to keep. When you're going through those trials and tribulations, that there's that kind of that light at the end of the tunnel. So thanks for sharing that today.
Yeah, I mean that's another really good one. There's light at the end of the tunnel, man. I kind of put those two together, and it just makes you feel better.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. So now transitioning into our main topic, how can you help our audience of real estate investors?
Yeah, so I'm huge on personal finance. I think that's where I've really excelled. I think a lot of that started in college as just having like very good savings habits, and that ultimately like spiraled into my real estate career with house hacks and so forth. So if you are your own personal CFO, if you're managing your own revenue, your own expenses, your own debt, I think that ultimately adds value into any sort of business you can start, any sort of like personal life. I think it all starts with your own personal finances.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I try to run my life like a business. I'm literally on a quarter system. I have all my personal finances in QuickBooks. Like I'm looking at expenses in different categories, and it took me a long time to get there. And I'm probably a little bit too attention to detail oriented. But for someone that's maybe starting out or wants to become that CFO of their own personal finances, what do you recommend? What were you doing in college, and how have you kind of excelled or changed, maybe some of your philosophy moving forward?
Yeah, so I think it all starts out with just managing your expenses, right? So if you start to budget on a monthly basis, there's multiple things I've done. The first one was just kind of having a notepad and writing down everything you're spending money on. When you start to have to like pull out that notepad and say, oh, $5 on a Starbucks coffee. I spent $10 on this shirt, $20 on this shirt. When you have to pull out that pocketbook, there's something like psychologically that says, maybe I don't need this exact thing. Because I think that's what it comes down to, is we spend a lot of money on little things that aren't really adding value to our life. So a lot of it comes down to managing expenses. And once you have the expenses under control, then we can get to adding revenue, income from different streams of income and so forth.
I love that. And it was so basic, right? Like, I know there's Mint out there. There's so many personal finance, like QuickBooks and things that you can do. But you're saying just keep it super simple and literally just write down everything you're spending money on and start really evaluating, should I be spending my money on this or not? Like, it's that simple, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's step number one. And then you get into kind of like more of an Excel like budgeting tool, or something like Mint, like you're talking about. Those are obviously like step 2 and 3. But that first step, when you start to pull out that pocketbook and you're spending money on stupid stuff like drinks at the bar with friends and that kind of stuff, it really starts to add up.
For sure. No, I know. It's like eating out. Like, if you just count out what you're eating out and how much money you spend, like, versus eating at home, it's like astronomical. It's a way to like immediately save like $1,000 a month. So what does kind of being your own personal CFO mean to you? Like, how strict do you take it? You know, are you like, how strict is your budget? Walk me through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I think the budget is something that adapts over time, obviously, as your life progresses, but extremely strict with the budget. So you have to have, obviously, your main categories that are non-negotiable, such as rent, such as food, those types of things. And then you have to separate out a couple other categories. Like, I like to budget for a couple of vacations now. I didn't used to do that, but now I have a category for budgeting for vacations and eating out and those types of things. But at the beginning, it was basically a zero-based budget of, you know, you're eating out once a week. That's $50 a week. So now we're allocating $200 a month to an eating out sort of line item. But yeah, it's really whatever buckets work for you. Or, you know, I know a buddy of mine who likes to go out dancing. So he allocates $25 a week to going out and dancing.
Sure. So, I mean, you can make it as individualized as you want. Now, are you using Mint? Are you using like an app or some sort of tool, or you kind of just created your own Excel document? How do you personally kind of track these expenses?
Yeah. So me personally, I don't use Mint or anything like that. I love just doing it like good old boy way, right in Excel. I bring in my expenses from my bank accounts and I categorize them individually, and, you know, make sure I'm hitting the budget every single month.
No, I love it. Yeah. And I think when you are writing those things down every week, you start realizing, what are my categories? Where do I want to spend money, right? Or where shouldn't I be spending money? And you're just a lot more mindful of it. So maybe transitioning a little bit from the personal CFO, let's talk real estate. So how did you take this, you know, bad student in high school, barely getting into college, found personal finance in college? How'd you find real estate, or like, how'd you get started in real estate from where you were in kind of college?
Yeah, so I guess I talked about the bad student in high school. Wasn't exactly the A+ student. And then in college, I was actually learning a topic like compounding interest. Just fascinated me. It was crazy that money could grow that quick, you know, doubles in 7 years at 8%, those kind of things. And I just dove all the way into that.
Nice.
And that's when I decided that real estate was going to be my avenue to do that. I got fascinated with real estate, even like the spreads on mortgages and that kind of stuff I was learning at the time.
Nice.
And dove right into real estate and said, a house hack is going to be the best ROI for me. And that's when I decided we're going directly into house hacking. So however I can save up enough money, which ultimately coupled with that kind of personal finance we've been talking about, I think I graduated college with like $3,000 in the bank. It's like nothing.
Yeah.
And then I did the whole budget and everything. And I said, okay, I can save $500 a month. Started saving $500 a month. Saved my bonuses I got, and then obviously as your salary increases, this became $800 a month, $1,000 a month. Well, about 2.5, 3 years later, I had enough for a down payment on a triplex. So went in, purchased the triplex. We did a little bit of rehab, and now I'm house hacking and living for free. So now
awesome.
Your money is starting to like snowball, right? Because not only are you saving that $1,000 a month, your salary is increasing. I'm also not paying for rent. My rent was like, let's call it $1,000 at the time. Sure. So now I'm saving $2,000 a month. And then that snowballed into ultimately found long distance real estate investing in Cleveland. So now I'm doing Burr investments in Cleveland. That snowballed into an Airbnb in Phoenix. And that's where we are now.
That's awesome. I want to backtrack just a little bit because you hit so many good points, and I want to dive in a little bit deeper. So on this, like, one big point I think you made was like, you didn't change your expenses, right? Like a lot of people, they house hack, they get that triplex, they got $1,000 extra a month, and now they're blowing $1,000 extra a month, right? But I think a key point you noted, and something I did too personally, was like, as my salary kept increasing, I lived below my means, right? I lived like I was still a student, even though I was a pharmacist making over $100,000 a year. I was living like I was making $30,000 a year, so I could snowball that amount. As expenses went down, I kept living the same, and you did the same. And I think that's just so key. I think a lot of people start making more money, and they go, oh, I can afford this much more on a car payment. I can afford this much bigger of a house. But if you can live within your means, and even like maybe below your means for just that little bit of time, like you said, it snowballs, and you just didn't go from one asset. You went to one asset in a triplex, more properties in Ohio, then back to the Airbnb. So let's talk a little bit about, how did you pick your out-of-state market? Like you said, you're home, you're born in Phoenix, raised in Phoenix, you're a Phoenix native. How the hell did you pick Ohio?
Yeah, so I was trying to balance out the portfolio. Kind of like a portfolio management thing that I learned in school, but more so towards real estate. Arizona is a big like appreciation market, but a lot less cash flow. So I settled on the Midwest, and I had like 3 different markets chosen at the time. I think it was like Cincinnati, Kansas, and Cleveland.
Okay.
And ultimately, I really wanted to be in Cincinnati. However, I didn't find the team that I liked there. I didn't really like the realtor, and I didn't really like the property management companies I was personally finding. Loved the realtor in Cleveland, and also loved the property management company I found.
Okay.
And ultimately, I think that's when I realized that team is the most important part of real estate. If you can have good people around you, you can succeed in like any market. So that's when we landed on Cleveland. And ultimately, just one property led into the other. And as you're running the numbers and cash flow, and that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you can look at, obviously we looked at demographics, right? Sure. We looked at population. We looked at housing market appreciation. We looked at the businesses around. One of the markets we landed on, there was a huge Amazon fulfillment center coming in there. Perfect. Nice. Boom. Yeah. Those are the types of things you kind of look at from, a quantitative perspective.
And then, like, being in Phoenix, did you have friends in these markets? Did you have any boots on the ground? Or how did you identify your team being out of state?
For Cleveland specifically, it was a lot of just research. Okay. So I think I started with Zillow, looking at realtors, and I just made a huge list of realtors, of property managers. There was like a form that I found online of questions to ask your property manager. I think it was like 25 questions. And I just started interviewing property management companies. Nice. As far as the realtor, I think I created a form myself on questions I wanted to ask them. And that just kind of evolves over time. Okay. But that's really what it is. You're almost like interviewing them as they're going to be your employee. Really, it ends up being more of a partnership, but it does start out as like an interview process.
Yeah, and it's critical. I think too many people don't interview their realtors or property managers, right? They just go, I got it referred, I'm going to take this person, or this person's listing the property, I'm going to go with them. But it's critical to make sure your values align, that those people know investing, right? Know somewhat like what you're trying to do, or maybe do it themselves. I always tell people, like, to me, those are the best people to work with on my team, or those people that are also investing, because you just speak the same language a lot of times. One thing I'm always interested in is like, how often do you go to Ohio? Have you ever been to Ohio? Like, do you ever see these properties, or talk to me about that?
That's a really good question. On the first house we purchased, I flew out to Ohio. I wanted to meet face to face with the realtor, face to face with the property management company. Since then, I haven't been there.
And how many years?
It's been what, 5 now?
Okay, nice.
So,
and that was just the first one. You bought a couple out there, right?
Yeah, I think I have 5 total in Ohio now.
Okay. So went out there for the first one, felt good, and you said, "Hey, I'll keep going, and I don't need to see any of these moving forward or see the people again."
I mean, so it's a lot of communication, solid communication with your property management company, solid communication with your realtor. I mean, they still send me pictures, every 6 months of the whole house. They'll send me pictures of anything that needs to be repaired. It's kind of like an iterative process of working together through long distance. And since they make me feel so comfortable by sending me pictures and talking to me about repairs, I don't necessarily need to go out there. Yeah. That being said, I'm going out there in December just to kind of check on the whole portfolio.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, you are checking on it. And how many team members do you have? Is it just the realtor, property manager? That's kind of the only thing you need?
As far as like your main core, people that are helping with just the asset, yes, but you also need to have a legal team as well. Okay. So I have a legal team as well that helps me out. They obviously do all the LLCs and all the quitclaim deeds and that kind of stuff.
Okay, very nice. So we talked kind of you're out of state, so kind of maybe bringing it back to Phoenix now. Can you get into a little bit more detail on maybe some of your house hacks, maybe a little bit from your triplex and then now your Airbnb in Phoenix, and just give us a little bit more background there?
Yeah. So the first house hack, the triplex, that was obviously my first time diving into real estate. Yeah. And, you make so many mistakes, like, oh yeah, but you're learning a ton and it always ends up working out. So we purchased the triplex in 2019 and, immediately the issue there was tenants. We wanted to raise rents from, I think it was like $500 a month all the way up to $1,000. And these guys were not leaving. They said, no, one of the guys remodeled something inside and he said, I want my money back and blah, blah, blah. And I said, sorry, man, you purchased the property. So, you have to put eviction notices on. And finally, after, 3 weeks of hassling back and forth, I think I gave each guy $200 and they left.
Nice. Cash for keys. It works every time.
Works every time. And we've done. And that actually snowballed into Cleveland, right? So I was like, oh, let's give everybody cash for keys. They leave. It's amicable. It's perfect.
Yep.
Not a ton of repair needed on that. I think we ended up spending maybe $7,000 on repairing the triplex, and we put people in right away. That is the fastest rental just because of the location that I own. And
that's awesome. Where in Phoenix is that triplex?
It's on Thomas and 52nd Street.
Okay. So yeah, super central area.
Yeah. So a lot of people that, kind of like that Old Town area, but you don't necessarily get Old Town rents.
Yeah.
But you have the whole path of progress. That's one of the things I've realized that I'm doing well is wherever the path of progress is heading, you want to be in line with it. It's not going to be the next year, might not be the next 2 years or 3 years. But now all of a sudden, everything around that triplex is just really building out nicely.
Absolutely. That's such a key point. I just want all our listeners to hear that again, build or buy in the path of progress. I've done it myself personally, new neighborhood developments. I learned in Vegas growing up. I was like, hey, there's this, outside part of town, but everything's building towards that. That was the high school I went to. It was just kind of how I grew up. And so when I got to Phoenix and my very first purchase was in Norterra here in Phoenix, but no one knew what Norterra was. Well, now everything's built up that 17 on the way to Anthem and that area in TSMC and everything's there. And so that area is, tripled in prices from when I bought in 2009 or so. And so I love that path of progress. I think it's like almost an easy button for real estate investors of like, hey, you want some appreciation, like go and buy in the path of process and then just wait, right? Buy real estate and wait. That's part of that, why that is true. So thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit. I think we got a good personal friend we share, and he told me something about you, that you haven't paid for rent or a mortgage in a number of years. So tell the audience a little bit about that story. Why have you not had to pay mortgage or rent for, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been ever since that triplex in 2019. Obviously, that's the goal of house hacking, right?
Sure.
So at the triplex, obviously the tenants in the back 2 units, they were covering the mortgage. And then I immediately flipped that over to an Airbnb in like 2021.
Nice.
And there's a little casita for the Airbnb. And
Nice.
that started paying the mortgage for the Airbnb. And it's kind of just been this philosophy of, when you look back at it, you've paid down debt on top of the fact that you're stacking up additional cash because you're not paying for rent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of been the goal.
Oh, that's awesome. I think it's like I feel like that's like a little badge you should be able to wear. Like, I haven't paid to live for 5 years or something. Like, it's such a cool story because I think like most people think they have to have that, right? Or they have to have that place to live. And I think through house hacking, through flipping, through, just finding these different vehicles of real estate investing, there's so much people can, gain value from. And I think, you're single, right? You're not married. I think it's it's a little easier if you don't have the family yet, but it's also something that I feel like people need to do more before they have that family and before they grow out. I wish I would have house hacked 3 or 4 different properties as opposed to just kind of one before I got married. So, I guess, what made you transition from kind of a triplex to multifamily in Cleveland to then an Airbnb? So what made you get into short-term rentals?
So short-term rental was, at the time, I could not find another house hack triplex or quadplex or anything like that.
Okay.
So at the time, the numbers weren't penciling. This was like 2020, late 2020, and I couldn't find anything to pencil out.
Okay.
So I said, all right, I need to come up with a new strategy. So one of the strategies I thought of was purchasing a house and getting a couple of friends to move in. I didn't necessarily want to do that. So that's when a buddy of mine said, hey, I'm doing Airbnb. I got a casita in the back, and it's going extremely well for me. I said, oh,
yeah.
This guy's house hacking Airbnb. This guy's pretty smart. So I started, looking into Airbnb and obviously ramping up my knowledge there. Mm-hmm. And we found a property and just kind of executed from there.
Very nice. So what's next for Trent, right? You've done some short-term rentals, you've done some house hacks. Like, where is your real estate portfolio going? Like, what's your next avenue of a purchase, or what are you trying to get into now?
So number one, I think Airbnb is not necessarily for me. I think the hospitality industry, I think everybody should do it. But man, is that customer service different? When you have long-term tenants, it's almost like they're thankful that they're renting from you. Mm-hmm. Airbnb is the exact opposite of that. So it's a lot more like hands-on. It's a lot more, you don't necessarily have control in those types of things. So next for me is kind of like back to the basics, right? We're going to go back into long-distance real estate investing and back into looking for small multifamilies in Phoenix.
Oh, back in Phoenix, not in the Midwest? Okay.
We're going to do both. We're kind of looking at both right now.
Okay, cool. And what, do you think you'll stay in just the Cleveland market, or do you think you'll expand to different out-of-state markets in the Midwest?
There's definitely other markets we're looking into right now.
Okay.
So it's possible that we expand out to other cities.
Okay, very nice. Love it.
In addition, we're also looking at lending opportunities. So a couple a couple of buddies of mine reached out, and we're kind of looking at lending as well. So we're just kind of getting going on that, but that's another avenue as well. So we're kind of just branching out a little bit, but we're definitely pulling back from the Airbnb market.
Love it. Yeah, I share your same hospitality concerns with Airbnb. It's not my cup of tea. I don't do any of it, so my wife handles it and she's amazing at it, but that's not necessarily where I'm trying to grow my portfolio either. So totally understand some of the hesitations there that you have. Really like great conversation, Trent. And I definitely want to have you back on the show to talk some of your lending opportunities as you guys structure that and kind of come up with a little bit more of, maybe our real estate audience of investors can maybe utilize your lending services in the future. But wanted to see, are you ready for the hot seat?
Let's do it, man.
All right. We ask all our guests the same final 4 hot questions. So number 1, Trent, what is one book you'd recommend to someone wanting to know more about real estate investing?
So I'm going to take this a little different spin.
All right.
I'm going to say Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you've read that. That's probably kind of a hot take here. But I think the principles of that book are very important for you to understand, like your personal finances.
Yep.
The book basically talks about, hey, like the average millionaire, he's not driving 14 Lamborghinis. He doesn't have the multi-million-dollar house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are principles that you can kind of take with you as you try to get into your journey of real estate investing.
No, I love it. Yeah, it's like more millionaires drive F-150s than any other car, right? And it's the truth. It's like the people that are super successful that I know, they're not the ones on social media showing pictures of their Lambos, right? It's like because they could give a F less about any of those things or statuses, right? They're just super wealthy and just continuing to invest. So I like that book, and I highly recommend it to anyone as well. What is your favorite productivity tip or trick? Maybe a tool, time saver, some sort of app that you utilize to get more done in a day than other people?
So I'm huge on vision. I'm huge on vision, and I'm huge on goals.
Okay.
I think if you create your own, Brandon Turner has like the vivid vision.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. I think writing down your goals every single year, that's great. And you almost like repeat it to yourself. Like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. And then if you repeat that to yourself every single day, you'll be amazed what ends up happening. Just the other day, I was looking at my 3 and 5 year goals from 2017, 2018, 2019, those years.
Yeah.
And it was awesome to go back and look and see how, you blew some of those goals out of the water.
Isn't it crazy? Like I love that. And I do the same thing. I write like 1 year and I write 5 year goals. I don't usually do the 3, but I actually write my goals every 12 weeks. So I do it like on a quarter system, but it is crazy when I go back and I look like 5 years ago, what some of my goals were, like buy an investment property or something, like, or just save $50,000 so you could have that. I call it like my next bullet for the next one. To what your challenges are today and what you're doing, it shows how quickly you can scale, how really that you can accomplish way more than you ever thought in 4 or 5 years. And so I'm a huge goal setter. So thanks for sharing that. Trent, what's your biggest real estate mistake or failure? And what did you learn from that experience?
Oh man, there's so many to count, right? You fail all the time, but what I will say is it's not like a specific moment where I like, wow, I failed. I lost $50,000 or whatever you're going to say. It's really just not hiring help or getting mentors sooner. I'm a guy that likes to do it all myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately kind of hindered me when it comes to real estate. There's a quote I like that's like, let me think of it. It's like there's 2 ways to learn: experience and mentorship, and God uses experience for those too dumb to get a mentor. so like go out, get a mentor, learn from people. There's tons of people, your meetup, for example. I've learned more there than I ever have on my own.
That's
so
awesome.
definitely learn from other people.
No, number one, thanks for that. And obviously always love having you come to the meetup. And it's been, whatever, like 5 years or so that you've been coming or you show up. But like in that situation, like I can't agree more. Like I think I'm the same. Like some of my biggest regrets are like not partnering sooner or thinking that I had to do it all myself or use all my own money to do some things. And it stunted my growth or my path. And now it's just now that I'm like, hey, how can I utilize more people? How can I do this with people? How can I leverage my network and my connections so we can all succeed, right? And so I think a lot of us guys are stubborn like that. We think we have to, or it's the only way is to do it all ourselves. And I definitely fall in that category of stubbornness. And finally, Trent, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Oh, very, very good question. I think really when it comes down to it, I don't want like fame or anything like that. I just want to be a good person. I want people to say like, hey, that Trent guy, he's a good person. Obviously, there's goals of number of people I want to help, how I want to help people, how I want to give back.
Sure.
But really, that would be 100% what I want. Just be a good person.
I love it, dude. And you're a good person in my book, so that's one. You don't have to,
Thanks, Travis.
But no, seriously, dude, you're a great person. Really appreciate this conversation. The best place for the Hot REI community to connect with Trent is through my meetup, if you guys ever want to come, if you're in the Phoenix metro area, but also on Instagram at Trent Varhol. I'll be sure to include his contact information in the show notes. Thank you again, Trent. This was a lot of fun, and I'm really excited for kind of your lending journey, but also to see some more real estate success in your small multifamily properties you're buying in the Midwest in Phoenix. And it's all, and I want to hear the first time you have to actually pay for rent or pay for a mortgage in the future. So to the audience, thank you for tuning in today and commit to taking action today to move your investing forward. Take care and God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast. Check out our website, hotrei.com, for additional content and resources. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review so we can continue to bring even more value to others through real estate investing.